Greetings. Welcome to the podcast, HASSDISCUSSES. We are joined by a friend of the channel, one who's interviewed me and I've interviewed him already, Cody Michael, the podcaster and comedian of The SoCo Show. And shouts out to him, shouts out to Seth Ott, and shouts out to J-Buck Studios. They are heavily gang affiliated over there. And stuff like that. Anyways, so we were talking about the Sam Jones guy, like that those interviews. What him or like you've seen those interviews, but what other like interviewers are hella unique that you fuck with?
Lately, I've been getting really into the Breakfast Club. Really liking Charlemagne and some of the folks that they bring on there. It's really it feels pretty casual, I think, is the thing that I like about it. There's a couple other ones that I've just recently. It's a different style, but I like the GQ interviews that they do, where there's like a few different styles. One of them is where they'll have an actor or a celebrity of some sort. They'll go through like their essential items. I've been watching a bunch of those. Have you seen them?
Yeah, they're like they go through like the best movies of their career and they're like most memorable.
That's the other one. Yeah. So there's that one, which actually, weirdly enough, my favorite one of those is actually Jack Black. He has a really good one. And then, so that's the celebrities recapping their career. And then there's a different type where it's like their essential products and stuff. So a guy will be like, or a woman, I guess, or no, it's all guys because it's GQ. They'll be like, this is the, I always carry around this notebook, and they'll tell a story about it. And
Al Pacino did one of those movie ones where he was like talking about Serpico and how he got cast in Serpico and shit.
Pacino would be a nuts crate. Like the ones I've seen, I saw Anthony Mackie's, Jack Black's, and just a couple others, but they were shorter career guys. But Pacino would be crazy because he's got, 40, 50 damn near years of movies for him to go through. He's seen a lot of different stuff. Did one. But like,
one of the, I think, I don't know, it might have been a different channel or some shit, but he did one of those. But Anthony Mackie, he did a really good indie film with it's called Half Nelson with Ryan Gosling.
I've heard of that, but I haven't seen it.
It was so good. It was one of those like. It was actually the director of Captain Marvel, the director crew from Captain Marvel. They did that, and I feel like they should stick to doing indie movies that have more meaning.
Yeah.
Then I know I'm all for like. I think Captain Marvel was interesting and stuff like that, and I think it was dope. But actually, I hated Captain Marvel when it came out, but now I actually realized that it was kind of funny.
I had the same exact experience.
Yeah.
I walked out. We did on the podcast. Actually, I'm a little embarrassed about this, but you can go back to an episode of the podcast where I just ream it for like 15 minutes, and I was really a dick about it. And then like a month later, I went back again because I was doing the entire MCU again before Endgame. And the second time around, I didn't have the expectation, I think is what it was. And I was like, we'll just sit and watch this and try and enjoy it. And it's pretty fun. And that's the thing that I've learned about Marvel in general. Seth on the SoCo Show is always just trying to remind me of this. It's just like, these are goofy comic book movies. Like you can't look at them
and they
mega
did not
critically.
Do anything about the 90s aesthetic. They didn't do that justice at all. I wasn't born in the fucking 90s, but like every scene
it was
is
just
in
barely
like an
there.
Every scene is in an office or like a warehouse or you know what I mean. Like there's no like there's that one mall scene.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like I think the movie would have been better if what's her name? Gwen Stefani, like just or No Doubt, just did like a whole musical in the middle of like a fight scene. Just had like a whole like the band be there. Remember how remember the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Remember how like they had Vanilla Ice sing a song in the middle of like a fight scene? Like movies need to do that now.
That would be fun because and this is the problem. I think a lot of movies are doing this lately. They're trying to capitalize on the nostalgia by setting a movie back in the 90s we're just going to keep seeing 90s ones now because we've kind of moved on from the 80s. But I think Wonder Woman 84 did a similar thing. It was like, let's put 2 or 3 things in here from that decade that don't even really make sense that they're happening all at the same time. That was the other problem. But the story, it doesn't matter that it happened then. Like in Captain Marvel, there's a blockbuster and she wears a 9 Inch Nails shirt. and they play the No Doubt song at one point. But like, it doesn't matter that it was the 90s. And the Wonder Woman is the same exact way. They put a couple of goofy outfits on, and that's it. Like the rest of it, it doesn't. It could have been said at literally any time, and it doesn't matter. And I think
Pedro Pascal was like, I'm doing this side mission because like,
yeah,
I made a lot of money from The Mandalorian, but like, I think I'm gonna make my children's tuition for college. I think I'm just gonna do that. I'm just gonna make my children's tuition for college. Just, and then the rest is for me. Like the Mandalorian money's for me, and then the Wonder Woman money's for my children's tuition for college.
It definitely felt that way. Let's get a payday, because he's not doing it for clout. He's got Mandalorian. He doesn't need clout. He's that's like the biggest show. It's the show that kicked off the Disney Plus. He doesn't need. He's got clout, and he's a respected actor.
You know what sucks though is that Wonder Woman is going to be seen as the one that kicked off HBO Max, and it's not that good of a fucking movie.
Yeah, there's so many better, like
True Detective.
True Detective was huge for HBO. HBO has been legendary since like I was young, right? Like ever since at least Sopranos, it's been just the biggest shit, like where they make the best stuff. I've been saying for a couple of years now that like if I could only pay for one streaming service or premium cable channel or whatever it is, it would be HBO, because like everything they put out is good, and there's not the volume that you'd get on a Netflix or whatever, but the baseline quality of everything on HBO is way better than I think any of the other streaming services. And like this last week, Judas and the Black Messiah, that was one of my favorite movies.
God, that was so good. I recently had Slim Gorilla on the show on a Raider Clan and Passion Play as artist, and we went in a whole tangent about how like traumatic like the story must have been for like the main character, you know what I mean? And how that's a fucking like, and we just went in on how like what was he saying? We were talking about how like the character like in the main character of the movie like killed himself in real life after he gave an interview about that, and I was like shit. And that leads me to advise people to look into CIA operations in the 60s and FBI operations in the 60s. There's a lot of shady stuff going on relating to many counterculture movements. It's while I would say that the civil rights movement was wrongfully targeted by the CIA, there is an example of that in a lot of hippie culture and how they would infiltrate hippie movements and anti-war movements as well. You might know about that, and I would definitely recommend people to like look into that. There's even a lot to do with the mind control shit that happened in the 60s. Look into that. Like
there's so many.
I'm not saying go to your local, like Kmart and like, burn it down and be like, F the CIA. You can't really do anything about it. The best thing you can do is learn information. Yeah. Educate yourself.
Yep. There's so many, like, this is one of the things that I think a lot of people are learning in the internet age, when you can just find out this stuff, is that some of the stories we've heard about some of the things that have happened were really craftily written. And so you don't hear about stuff like what they were doing with the civil rights movement and Fred Hampton in particular. The hippie movement is the exact same way. It was just, that was all just anti-socialism. It had to do with race, but it was far more, I think, about socialism. And that goes back even further. You talked like the LSD experiments. You can go back to Tuskegee and the experiments they did on them.
Which they actually, you know what I mean?
Yeah. They touched on that in Falcon too, a little bit, because they related Isaiah Bradley's character to the Tuskegee experiments. And there's a lot of examples of, I'm not like a big conspiracy guy, but some of the stuff that we've seen that's like literally proven by records is pretty uncool stuff that the governments had their hands in. So there's a whole genre of shit. There's no shortage of stuff that you can look up that
for sure
about
like,
that.
The best thing that you can do when it comes to conspiracy theories is first off, it's not a conversation starter. You know what I mean? Like know that not everybody's gonna be into it. I'd say if you were into conspiracy theories, treat it like BDSM. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Be into it, but don't talk about
BDSM, you know what I mean? Know that some people are into it, but not everybody's into it.
That's a good take.
That's how, yeah. So
treat it like BDS. I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah. Yeah, use that in a stand-up routine, please. By the way, he does comedy. If the audience is unfamiliar with Cody Michael, he does stand-up comedy, and follow him on Instagram. Links in the description to his Instagram and all that. But we still got more to talk about. What I love about Marvel though is how they definitely try and pull from the tinfoil hat community. You know what I mean? When it comes to the New World Order, like Hydra is basically just the fucking New World Order if you really think about it.
They've been doing, and I don't think people have always noticed it, but it was very apparent in Falcon. They've always had, I think comic books have always had, because comic books rose up in the 60s and 70s, right? And I think what we've seen in the Marvel movies, there's always been a storyline about like the military industrial complex and big government and all that stuff. It's always, ever since Iron Man, the first one, there's always been conversation in those movies about what are we doing military wise? Who are we arming? Who are we fighting against? Who's the real enemy? And it's very apparent and in front of you in Falcon and Winter Soldier. And I think a lot of times the explosions and stuff mask it in the other ones, so they're not seen as like controversial. But I don't think people remember always that comic books were really a rebellious kind of genre for a long time. There was a lot of like anti-racist and anti-government stuff because, those guys, fucking Stan Lee was such a hippie back then too, just like all those other guys.
Like he's the one who created the Black Panther character, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So like, and I feel like the way people viewed comic books is probably the same way people viewed Star Trek. You know what I mean?
Yep. Star Trek, very similar.
More so Marvel comics, but I mean, DC too, but not really. Like DC was not really seen as like innovative. Really, they were just. I mean, like it's way more like DC is way more mythological. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've heard two thoughts on that, on the comparison. One thing that I've heard explained is that Marvel characters, Marvel makes its comics about regular people who get superpowers. So it's about people becoming gods. And DC always starts with a powerful person and they're trying to fit into, so that's gods trying to be people.
Yes.
And it's in reverse.
Shit. Yes.
And in DC, I think DC, and I think deep comic book nerds are going to probably reject this, but I don't really know a lot of DC. I think DC is really just about good and evil, like very black and white. Good Superman, good. He just is righteous and good and all American, and he's good, and the people he goes against are bad. And I think, with the exception of maybe Batman, who tries to kind of toe those lines, I think the MCU has far more gray area. You have characters that are more flawed, heroes that are more flawed, and villains who are more sympathetic. And like I said, I'm certain that I'm forgetting really good examples in the DC part, but that's kind of why I prefer Marvel for both of those reasons.
Yeah, but that's why I love to step out of the Marvel and DC box and check out fucking Hellboy. You know what I mean? Because Hellboy is really about identity. If you actually think about it, it's like Hellboy is told, he's the comer of he's gonna bring the apocalypse. His purpose in life is nothing but to bring the apocalypse upon Earth, and he says no. I'm gonna prevent that. And my whole life, I'm gonna make my existence devoted to preventing a cataclysmic event and stopping evil forces. And you could tie that to a lot of things. What I also would like to go into is I love when huge characters like that often represent the writer and stuff like that. I don't know much about Hellboy representing Mike, whatever his name is, Mike Mignola, or whatever his name is. But another example of that, which is not really a comic book, there's comic book adaptations of it, The Matrix. The directors are transgender women, okay? And it's all about reality being fake, or like reality being what you perceive it as or what you make it, or shit like that. That's what The Matrix is about. And then when you realize like the writers of it are both transgender, bro, what? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it wasn't until, I don't think it was until they came out as trans that people realized it. Like it just like I was just saying about the Marvel and how they hide the deeper theme. I think everyone was so distracted by the shininess and the fighting that they didn't really see that level until they came out. And then it was very obvious. It was like, oh, okay, here's a world where you're trying to look the way everything's supposed to look, but then there's just reality behind it. That's the truth. And I thought that was really fascinating. I'm really stoked for the fourth Matrix movie. And I think I will say this might be a hot take. I think the sequels to the Matrix don't get nearly as much credit as they should.
Thank you.
I think they're unjustly shit on, and people who hate them didn't give them a fair shake. I rewatch them every few years, and I think it's really hard to love the first one and understand that it's a masterpiece, which I don't know anyone who doesn't agree with that. And then to hate the sequels, you would have to hate the first one to truly hate the sequels. So I don't think someone's really paying attention if they think
the Wachowskis again.
Yeah.
Wachowski siblings. The Jupiter Ascending movie and Speed Racer are two fucking great movies. Like, I love Speed Racer. It's awesome.
That one has I've not seen either of those. I heard Jupiter Ascending was crap, but there's probably a decent chance that it just didn't get a fair shake, I think.
Okay, let's go into Jupiter Ascending. Or are you going to talk about Speed Racer real quick?
Well, the thing I was going to say about Speed Racer is I've not seen it, but it's one of those movies that I'm fully aware of has a really passionate fan base, and that people who like it really dig it. So that's always a sign of a good movie for me, even if it didn't do well critically. And I don't know what it did, or commercially. I don't know how much money it made or whatever, but Jupiter Ascending I know didn't make much at all.
Yeah, so I think I don't know about the money aspect, but Jupiter Ascending is like, it's so there's a certain aspects to conspiracy theories that relate to Jupiter Ascending in an interesting way. There is the spatial oriented conspiracy theories, guys who have a lot of conspiracy theories that are involved with space and stuff like that. There is conspiracies that are involved around reality and the place that the world is in, and there's conspiracy theories that relate to occultism and stuff like that. When I have more so tapped into the occult conspiracies and the spatial conspiracy theories, you learn a lot. You analyze a lot about hollow Earth theory and the secret space program, and how there's supposedly, and this is also I treat this shit like the Lord of the Rings, okay? Just know that.
Sure.
Okay, but there's supposedly like already people on Jupiter and all over this universe and shit, and how like humans have already been on like Mars and stuff and all this weird shit, right? Jupiter appeals to that, where there's like lizards on, like there's like an entire civilization that hangs out in this like cloud city community type of thing in the middle of the red dot of Jupiter, and like stuff like that, and how there's like a lizard civilization that like is an evil aliens, and then there's good aliens that have like anti-aging technology, and they step into this bath like butt ass naked, and they come out like 30 years younger and shit, and there's like a lot of cool shit, and Jupiter Ascending is really cool from a lore standpoint, and how like there's aliens that you see, but like they're that come on our Earth and they're like invisible or some shit, and how there's like a bunch of aliens on Earth, but they're like invisible, kind of like Men in Black. I feel like it's heavily
that's what I was hearing. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. Is it sounds like Men in Black. But
it's way more. It's like Men in Black, except it's barely set on Earth at all.
Yeah, it's the scale of it is way wider, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's real fun. I definitely advise anybody to check it out. But people like, they see Channing Tatum and they're like Mila Kunis, and they're like, oh, fuck both those actors. Because I don't know why. Just people hate them because like they're big actors. People I
think they've both been in good things. But neither of them are someone I would go, that person needs an Oscar. You know what I mean? Like they've been in fun stuff. I don't dislike either of them, but I don't like look at them critically and go, what an amazing actor. Maybe that's not fair to them. I don't know, but they're like Vin Diesel to me. Like there's some Vin Diesel movies I like, but I don't need him acting in a period drama. Like that's a whole different kind of fucking thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I want to see Vin Diesel like dress up in like a Roman suit. Maybe that would be cool. Maybe not. I don't know.
It'd be tough to put, unless he can do some his voice. I think it's obviously his strength. That's what's made his career is his voice, but his voice I don't think it can exist before like 1995. It's so, the way he talks is so time specific. You couldn't put him in the 40s and have him make sense unless he was going to really change. And I don't know what his vocal range is like, but it's so distinct and it's so modern and current.
Yeah.
Like I can't, for me, Vin Diesel is always Triple X doing something different because he's so aggressively 2002 in Triple X. And I just think he's kind of stuck in that time. And he's made a big career out of movies that are set in that time. So, you know, it's not necessarily a problem for him, but
now that we're talking about actors, I feel like people got to start like giving, not really start. I feel like people, you know, obviously this is a career pathway. The casting agent or whatever that shit is called, like the guy who picks all the actors for the thing. Okay. The person who's like recently one of the best examples of a casting agent or whatever doing that successfully and doing that justly is the cast of Dune.
Yes.
Oh my
that
God.
They they didn't give a shit about their budget for actors. I know that much. They got some expensive
the budget is like
people.
10 times the most expensive movie at Sundance.
Yeah. They I think what's interesting in Dune is you have all these really well-known, pretty well-respected actors
with huge fan bases, like Zendaya's fan base, holy shit.
Big fan bases, but none of them overshadow the rest of them. Like, and that's one of the things I like about Chalamet too, is he's like obviously a superstar. Everybody knows him and everybody loves him and he's a really good actor, but he doesn't eclipse everyone. It's the movie can exist and these characters can disappear behind the roles. If you put Vin Diesel in Dune, you're like Vin Diesel. That's Vin Diesel. But Chalamet can disappear into a character. Rebecca Ferguson can disappear into a character. I think Batista's in that. He's maybe the closest.
Jason Momoa's in it.
Momoa. But these are actors who, to your point, we know who those actors are. They're gonna put butts in seats, but they can also disappear. And I'm not just going, oh look, it's The Rock and Jason Statham, and I don't even know their characters' names. You know what I mean? Like, and you have to be able to do that with an ensemble and with a sci-fi like world building cast. You can't be thinking about the actor. You have to be in the world. And it seems like this cast is one where they'll be able to do that.
I think that like I rarely do this. I rarely go back and like read the fucking book like before the thing comes out. I rarely do that. But for this, I decided I'm going to do that.
You did? You read Dune, huh?
Yeah, I did that like a year ago, and I was like, oh my, yes. Like, this is...
You dug it?
It's amazing. Like, even though it's like 800 pages, and the community behind Dune is the least toxic fucking community, because everybody agrees this shit's amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody loves it. I was on a plane with someone before, I was sitting next on a plane with some like Indian architect, and I was showing him like Dune, and he was like, yeah, I read that like once a year.
Wow.
I was like, yeah, dude, fucking A. Like that's the type of shit. That's like me with like, I don't know what movie that is, like City of God. I watch that like every 3 months or some shit.
I still haven't. You told me it last.
Oh my God.
We agreed last time that I would go watch City of God. I remember this last time I was on here, and I still have not done it. But I'll put it back on my list.
HBO Max.
Is it now? Okay. Well, then that's it. I'm gonna have to put it. It's in the queue. It's in the queue. Consider it watched. By the next time.
I'm watching on HBO Max. Yeah. Even though I still want to talk about Dune, but I watched a lot of Akira. I've been trying to get into more Akira Kurosawa films.
So on Kurosawa, like total legend. He's one of those guys that nobody is aware of how influential he was, but like any major director of a certain age will tell you they were heavily influenced by him, but the average person just has never heard.
George Lucas, okay, like a lot of and most Western directors, most of the big Westerns are just straight up adaptations of Kurosawa, like Seven Samurai,
Magnificent Seven.
Nobody fucking thinks about that shit though. Everybody's like, I just love West, like, you know, it's like what do you think is it like it's like, you know, Americans, they just, you know, we just steal shit and say, and now everybody sees it as our shit. Yeah. And really, hey, it's not.
Yep. All Westerns are just samurai movies. I don't know if you, I don't know how much of a gamer you are, Mike, but the game Ghost of Tsushima that came out last year, I played through that on PlayStation 4, and it's the only game ever on PlayStation 4 that I've platinumed. I got all the trophies on it because it's so amazing. I spent like 90 hours on it, and it's a samurai tale set on Tsushima Island in Japan, and you can play the game in Kurosawa mode, which is this presentation style where they put the whole game in this grainy black and white with Japanese language with English subtitles, and it's amazing. I played the entire game that way, and it's gorgeous and so much fun. It's like living out, because that the plot of it feels like it was ripped from a Kurosawa movie. So it feels, if anyone has that game, play it in that mode. It feels so authentic and cool. I loved it. It's my favorite, one of my favorite games I've ever played, probably top 5.
I'd play that, but I sold my PS4 out of desperate nature.
I'm working on. Maybe I'll send you mine, Mike. I got. I'm hoping to get a PS5 soon. I still haven't not gotten lucky enough to get one, but I don't know what I'll do when PS4. So maybe I'll ship it out to you.
Yes, please. So back on the Dune though, like that book. While the whole children, prodigy, like my father died and now I gotta fucking take up that's not necessarily an original thing, but the book was written in the 60s, guys. Yeah. Okay?
Yep.
And it's a very good book in the concept, what people are fighting for. Good, thing that people are fighting for, the melange spice, all that. It's so interesting. And it's like, everybody's talking. I'm not saying, I am saying this. It has the possibility, maybe if we weren't in a fucking pandemic, it would have had the possibility to be as big as Star Wars and Lord of the Rings.
Yep. That's what people have been, other than, right? Because isn't the thing they say like that it's unfilmable, right? Because the one they made whenever ago is such crap, I guess. But they say that the book is it's so good and so vast that it's unfilmable. But I don't think anything's unfilmable to Villeneuve. I think he was the perfect guy to pick for this. But yeah, that's what I've heard, is in terms of just the lore and the background of the source material. I have not read the book. I have it, but I have not read it yet. I'm hoping to before it comes out. But that's what I've heard. Everyone who's a fan of it says like there's plenty here that people have already proven that they like. Because things like Star Wars and a lot of the big sci-fi franchises that have come since then are influenced by Dune in a major way, because that was one of the books every nerd read during a certain point in time. So,
like, we need epic movies. I feel like the only instance of something ever being epic in the past few years would be, Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah.
Barely. Like, there's way so much more personal. Those movies are so personal.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Infinity War was epic, but the way everything was filmed is like, when you make a movie like that, when you make a fucking movie that requires you to have already watched 20 movies, there's no time to breathe, and the movie ends up being so fast and everything's pointed out to be in conclusion. When the movie is only like about 3, or based off of like only 3 things, small amount of characters, the movie has room to breathe, the movie can be long. Like in Helm's Deep, my favorite part of the Battle of Helm's Deep in Lord of the Rings is the shots, the conversations everybody has. Like Aragorn goes up to that little kid who's like scared as shit, and he's like telling him like, don't be afraid and all this shit. But in Infinity War, there's none of that. It's like, okay, we're at Wakanda now, okay? Like,
yep.
Like, but like, why isn't there like a conversation on the plane on the way to Wakanda? But then like it's in the movie, it's like, oh, it took fucking 2 seconds to get here. Like nobody, like everybody's just like, it's not as bad, but it's like, I'm not saying Infinity War is a bad movie, but I'm terms of the pacing of the movie. I don't like the pacing or editing of the movie.
It just depends on everything. Like you said, you have to have seen everything.
Cocaine, it's just
yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's just, I want it all right fucking now. Yeah, cocaine's a really good analogy. Endgame was that same way because it's 3 hours that goes right by, because they set all the groundwork, right? Those conversations you're talking about happened 5 movies ago in 2017, and you're supposed to remember that stuff, which I think is potentially the challenge for Dune, because I know there's a vastness to it. And so how can you get people hooked in? I'm glad that they said already that they want to make a couple. The first book isn't going to be one movie, right? They're splitting it.
Yeah, and
And
two.
I'm glad. I like when they do that. I don't like when they do it like the last Harry Potter movie or the last Hunger Games or the last Twilight, because that's a cash grab. But for a book that vast, I think if you take the time, then it can be really rewarding. And I'm of two minds. One is that if you can make a good movie, you can do it in an hour 45. But if you really want to build something out and have it have depth and breadth, then don't be afraid to take your time. Don't be afraid to make a long movie. I think the Snyder Cut being 4 hours long, it could it have been a lot shorter and still been a good movie? Absolutely. But when you can see everything that's going into it, Watchmen's another example of this. Give me
Yeah.
all of the information, but when you start cutting stuff out just for the sake of keeping it short, you can lose what makes a movie good. And so I like a short movie as much as the next guy, and I value my time as much as the next guy. But when you really give a movie a chance to breathe, and The Dark Tower is a good example of this, because I think The Dark Tower has a really good fan base, just like you were talking about for Dune. Everyone I know who's read the Dark Tower series, Stephen King, it's their favorite thing. It's my favorite series of books that I've read. And it's an amazing series. And then they came out with this Idris Elba, Matthew McConaughey version a couple years ago, and they tried to condense 7 books, which, like, the audio books for that series, it's probably between 150 and 200 hours of audiobook. And they tried to do it in like a 100-minute movie. And it was such horseshit, because like they took out everything that made it special and that hooked you and made it interesting. And that's the exact wrong thing to do. Like, they should have planned to do 10 Dark Tower movies from the start if they wanted people to actually enjoy them, but they thought they could just capitalize on the IP and the title of it and put a couple stars in and no one would care. And people who read the book,
From
myself
Stephen
included,
King's hit
were
series.
just, yeah, exactly. We're just pissed. Like, it made me really fucking angry. There's a YouTube video out there somewhere of me just cussing up a storm talking about Dark Tower because I hated it so much. Maybe people who didn't read the books didn't hate it. I don't know, but I thought it stunk because, yeah, you take out all the soul of it when you start cutting down just for the sake of time.
I feel like the lore was cool in the movie because I've never read the books, but the lore was cool in the movie, but it wasn't really that. Everything was just happening fucking fast as shit.
Yep. Because the only parts they kept were parts that felt familiar, parts that they knew people would understand without them having to explain. This kid's got some power, and the Idris Elba character can't miss with a gun. Like, that's simple. But the reality is there's a ton of depth and nuance to both of their characters and for the Matthew McConaughey character, but they simplified them down so that they could save time and not need to explain them. They're like, let's just make them immediately digestible and make them into archetypes. And the book, even just if you just took the first book, The Gunslinger, in that series and read it, and it's like a 10-hour read maybe. It's amazing. That book is one of my favorite books, even outside of the entire series. And that's the problem. You take out, and that's what I'm hoping they don't do with Dune. And that's why I'm glad they did 2 movies. They
With Dune,
could probably use more.
as I have been, when it was being filmed, I was heavily observing the filming process. I was there with so I just saw on Instagram like a lot of shit, like they're in like fucking Jordan, some random third, fucking African country, like checking out everything, filming in real location. Like I would advise, and no, I can't advise this, but I would advise people to expect. I can't advise people. I said I couldn't. I would advise people to expect like not a bunch of, but like 1-minute shots of like a giant desert, and then one person walking to have a short conversation with one person, and that short conversation is very meaningful. And then some big, like, I advise people to expect a lot of wide, beautiful shots of like giant sandworms fucking eating shit and like going up and down. Like, you're gonna see a lot of beautiful stuff, and that's why, like, I feel like they kind of did what New Line Cinema did with Peter Jackson. Okay, they said we're gonna find one enthusiastic, man baby,
Yeah.
and give him hundreds of millions of dollars, go to some like foreign country and just
Yep.
go all out.
Yep.
And like with something that he's loved reading his entire life.
Yep.
And I feel like that's what they did with Denis, and that's exactly what they did with Peter Jackson when it came to Lord of the Rings. And I feel like the skill, or not really the skill, the intelligence of picking Peter Jackson is because they decided, okay, we're gonna go to New Zealand and Australia and film it there. That is an intelligent thing to do because, like pick. It's like, what if Taika Waititi? What if instead of having him film the movie in Canada or wherever he filmed it, why don't you have him go back to Australia or New Zealand or wherever he's from and film it there? Like, they should have. I want to see people like pick foreign filmmakers and like let's say big Hollywood studio man approaches Bong Joon-ho. Hey, why don't you make a movie for me about this property? And he's like, yeah, sure, but I want to go back to Korea. Like,
Yeah.
How about
don't make
say
him shoot
no
it in
and say
Toronto.
go,
Yep. Because that's especially in sci-fi, you have to have an environment that is not immediately familiar. I have to be able to believe that that's not our planet.
America is painfully familiar.
Yeah, exactly. You shoot something in Atlanta, I don't care. And this is one of the small issues I have with the MCU. It never matters where they are, ever. They're always in just a city. Like you could strip away all of the title,
Louisiana,
it doesn't matter.
And they just say, okay, in Louisiana, everybody sells shrimp.
Yeah, exactly. They show a boat. Like that's how and then, they're in New York all of a sudden, and now they're in Europe, but it never looks different. But in Lord of the Rings, you feel like you're in Middle Earth because they show landscapes and things that you don't see all the time. Maps. You know what I mean? Star Wars did this really well. They went overseas and shot. They went to that little island in like Ireland or wherever to shoot the Luke part in the sequel trilogy.
Because that's what Star Wars has always done. If Star Wars is a shitty movie, the lore, the character design, everything's beautiful. And that's why they're actually rewatchable. Like, even if a Star Wars movie is a shitty movie, you can still go back and watch it and appreciate, like, the blocking and the setup of everything. And
it's just meticulously well thought out. And that's what you get there's a danger in giving a movie like that to a fan of the source material. Like Zack Snyder in Watchmen. I love Watchmen, but some people think it's overindulgent because it's too about the source material, and you run that risk. But if someone's going to take it seriously and treat it with care, then you can get something really nice like that. So there's some give and take there, but I don't know. There's good. Peter Jackson's a perfect example. I think that was one of the best decisions that a studio made. Maybe besides the hiring of Kevin Feige, like in the last 25 years, those are probably two of the best decisions that have been made at all in film.
Yeah. And that's why, like, that's when it comes to location cinema, that's why I've always preferred Casino over Goodfellas, because Goodfellas is a really scattered around movie. Yes, it's a true story. Oh my God. So this is when I met Tony. Every mob movie copies the same. That's why I hate The Irishman. Yep. I used to like The Irishman, but I hate.
Never watched it.
Oh my. So The Irishman is essentially just like, it's the same movie as Goodfellas. It's like,
that's
so
what
I met Tony, and then so I did things out of respect instead of it wasn't out of it wasn't for the money. It was for respect. You know what I'm saying? And then when I met Tony, he introduced me to the guys. You know what I'm saying? And then when we went in the pen, you know what I'm saying? This thing happened in the pen. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, fucking God, I don't like every fucking mob movie. And that's why I like City of God, because it's like a complete gangster movie, but it's set in Rio de Janeiro, and it's like a completely unfamiliar environment. And the movie is so uplifting. Every mob movie, the main character, not every, but most mob movies, the main character is a shit person that ends up being the villain in the movie. With City of God, the main character is a bystander journalist who uplifts himself through watching all his friends go through all these violent paths. And at the end of the movie, I'm not going to say what happens at the end of the movie. You will see a very uplifting ending. You will see a very uplifting ending for his life and where his direction in life goes after getting through a tough spot, and how that relates to his creative career as a journalist, and how that related. But you also miss the shitty, disgusting scum of the earth that he used to surround himself with in the city of God. And that's why when it comes to location, that movie is brilliant. But Casino is another example of that, because Casino, it's like the modern Western. It shows how casinos used to be independently owned by, people, and how like it changed from all casinos used to be owned by independent people, and now they're owned by it's basically Disneyland, and all these companies bought everything, and it shows in whole era in one location how everything changed, and it's so much more centered around the relationships, and also it's funny as shit, and Joe Pesci's way better in that than any other movie's ever done.
Casino is. I've seen Casino and Goodfellas, and I agree with you. I prefer Casino, and I don't think enough people have seen Casino. But yeah, when The Irishman came out, I was like, I don't need to see it. I've seen Casino, I've seen The Irishman. I doubt this, or I've seen Casino, I've seen Goodfellas.
That's what I want.
I doubt this is that much better, so I'll stick to those.
Everyone's like, Joe Pesci came out of retirement. Go back, Joe. Okay, like go back. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't even want to come out of retirement. He was like, I bet he was like, God, can my friends just stop?
Leave me alone. He did, yeah.
Leave me alone. Like he was like,
got to work with his buddies and
playing golf.
Well, that and it's Netflix, so they paid him a fuckload of money to get back for that. So
true, yeah. So, and even in the movie, he's not that enthusiastic. But that's why recently I found way more appreciation for independent cinema, and more so independent art in general when it comes to my music.
Mm-hmm.
You will find in my playlists a majority of the people I listen to I know in person, or barely have over 10,000 followers.
Yeah.
Or aren't signed to major labels or some shit. And even with the movies that I've been appreciating recently, I've been way more consuming myself with independent films, and like new and old, but people shouldn't be fucking talking about let me think of an example. People should not be talking about that shitty Melissa McCarthy movie that just came out. People should be talking about shit that the Florida Project. I don't know what not like the Minari or some shit.
Yep.
People should be talking about that. But
yeah.
I don't know. I find
because that's where that's where you get originality. That's the thing. And this has always been the case, right? Or at least for our lifetimes. If you get into pop stuff, or you get into big studio stuff, or you get into major label stuff, they want to produce for the masses, right? And so they're appealing to the lowest common denominator. So you get really simplified, typically flat, hollow stuff, right? But indie filmmakers or indie producers or musicians, they're making these are passion projects. They've thought everything through. They have all the detail. They're expressing their vision, and it wasn't because the studio didn't latch onto it. They didn't chisel off all the good and interesting stuff about it. So yeah, I think the indie stuff lately, Promising Young Woman is one from last year that's getting a lot of talk, and that was maybe a little more poppy, but still kind of independently made. But it had a lot of creativity and different stuff that you would never, I don't know if you've seen that movie. They would never have done that movie that way if it were released by WB or fucking, Universal or whoever. You get more freedom to try what you want to do. You can take more risks, and that almost always pays off. If people want popcorn flicks and they want something that's easy to watch, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want interesting, new, original, creative stuff, you have to go indie, I think, for the most part.
Yeah, I think I want to talk about something though that I don't think I've heard anybody really talk about when it comes to the concept of studio manufactured content that is meant for a huge, audience, and they only are making something for one type of people. People have never actually analyzed the fact that if you're in a studio and you're deciding, hey, I'm going to make something simplistic, boring, and bullshit just for one type of person, you'll understand how that person probably, their weekend probably consists of fisting strangers in a basement in New Jersey for Bitcoin. Okay, that is a very degrading thing for someone to do. When you say, hey, I'm going to make something for one type of person, only for this type of person, and you're dumbing down millions of people. You're saying, hey, fuck all these people. They only want this one type of thing. Like, you're consistently disregarding someone who, you're disregarding independent thought. You're disregarding, because you automatically assume, because if you're thinking that way, you assume every person wants the same thing. When, no, every person wants different things, and they're all, it's like the Frank Zappa, like the way, like I love, there's a quote by Frank Zappa, where he was like, and I think any creator should aspire to do this, oh man, I gotta find this quote, but you get what I mean, though?
Yeah. I just think, well, because the problem is it's so impossible to find what everyone's going to like. And so what they end up finding is what no one's going to hate. And so you get a lot of this inoffensive, easily digestible content, but it doesn't do anything other than take up some time. Right. So yeah, I think if you want to get like actually touched or moved by something, there are exceptions to this, no doubt. Right. Like I think a lot of the stuff Marvel has done, especially lately, manages to still be creative and different and interesting in ways while still being popular. But it's really, really hard to do because you have to worry about, am I going to offend this group of people, or am I going to say the wrong thing that these people aren't going to respond to? Or, so yeah, it's that issue of creating something that no one's going to hate, and you end up with all this watered down BS that all feels the same. There's only like 2 plots that get made for these big studio movies, and we're all sick of them. And that's why some of the indie movies are blown up, especially lately. And they're easy to put out. It's, you can put a movie on YouTube and it can get 2 million views. And then a studio pick Paranormal Activity. They had to make that on a shoestring budget. They got creative with it.
Yes.
Then a studio picked it up and they let them put it out the way it was made. And they made a shitload of money off of that movie. But then as they continued to make them, and they were like, this is a blockbuster, we want to get everyone into it, they got less and less creative and more sucky over time.
That's why
Saw's the same way. Horror movies are bad at this.
Cult fan bases around the world when it comes to creativity. And that's why when you make something that quote unquote blows up, you should do that. But after you do that, you should never sacrifice your integrity as an artist. And when you find someone who has never done that, never sacrificed their integrity as an artist, but blown up off of one thing, that's when you've struck in the gold mine as a fan of something. And I feel like when an artist creates something so specific and you build a cult fan base, you have the mentality of Frank Zappa. I'm going to play a clip of a Frank Zappa quote, and you'll resonate with this, Cody.
I'm a person who...
Hold on.
I'm a person who likes to do what he wants to do and has worked at it for 20 years and can generally do what he wants to do, whether people like it or not. And what I do is designed for people who like it, not for people who don't. And I have no desire to inflict it on people who don't want to consume it. And I'm committed to turning out as much of it as possible for the people who like it. It's there if you like it. If you don't like it, there's all those other names on the list.
Yep.
But if you're in a studio, you don't have that mindset.
Right. 3 names that brings to mind. Tarantino. Tarantino just always does Tarantino shit. People like it. It makes big bucks, but it's always Tarantino. It's always his vision.
Yeah.
Taika Waititi, you just mentioned him. His stuff is always so original and so good, and he's got a fan base that's wide now, so his stuff can be popular. But it never, even in Thor, you can feel his influence in that movie. Even though the studio gave him some things, he was able to exert what he wanted to do. The third one is Edgar Wright. I'm not the biggest Edgar Wright fan,
yes.
but there are a few of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is one of my top 3 favorite movies ever. And all of his movies, I'm getting him and James Gunn, I'm amalgamating the two of them. But Edgar Wright's movies are always so unique, even when people don't like them. James Gunn, I'm not a big fan of, but he makes his type of movies, and people respond to him or people don't. And I think you're seeing it with the Suicide Squad. He's not trying, I don't think he's trying to save the DCEU and like make something everyone's going to like. I think he's making a huge budget superhero movie that his fans want to go see. And so even though I don't really respond to his work quite so much, James Gunn, that is, I want him to be able to do it the way he wants to do it. And I think that's really fucking cool when people don't, like you said, sacrifice. I want to make $1 billion off this movie, so I'll just do whatever the studio says and give you the watered down version. Give me whatever style you came up with, and I'll decide if I like it or not, but make it yours,
On the indie route of what you're discussing, the Safdie brothers are a clear example of that. Starting Alara,
Yeah.
They started in Alara. They do like radio shows and interviews and shit on their fucking SoundCloud, and they have like Julia Fox, the girl from the movie. She has her own radio show on SoundCloud. I don't know if they're doing that anymore, but they have their own unique type of thing going on. And
Yep.
Even when they were filming Uncut Gems, they kind of pulled Adam Sandler aside and were like, hey, let's shoot this short film. And they got Adam Sandler to dress up as a mime and Benny Safdie, and they like did this like New York City film about like street performers and shit, like street hustlers and shit like that. And a small little short film on Vimeo and shit. And they have their own like website in Alara, and they built their own fan base and shit. And there's like a bunch of like there's a Safdie Bros meme account like where there's like movie memes only about Safdie Bros films and shit. It's not run by the Safdie brothers, but they have like a giant fan base, and I love that shit because I love that like that guerrilla style of movies because like literally the guy. Have you seen Uncut Gems? Right? Yeah.
Dude, that was in my top 5. I think.
Yeah, we talked about it. We talked about it, but
really awesome.
The best part about it is like the Keith William Richards guy, the guy who played the Phil. The guy who had the
Yep.
shot someone at the end of the movie. That's part of the movie. They found him walking to a fucking Subway in fucking New York City. They're like, he looks like he'd be good. Let's go get him. You know what I'm saying? They literally just fucking found this guy on the street, and now he's like acting in like Sundance short films and shit. And now he's like an act. You know what I mean? Like that's the type of shit I like to see. You know what I'm saying? And I love that.
Yep.
And I love like it's like the Florida Project. Like she wasn't an actor before that shit.
Right.
We need more of that. We need more of that. Like I'm not saying anybody can do acting, but when you find acting is something you got to program yourself to do. But when you find somebody for a movie that in real life is very similar to the character, then you're going to have a lot of fun watching and filming. And
it's real. It's authentic. People nowadays can spot bullshit 20 miles away, and you take, I don't name a huge Hollywood. If you took Tom Cruise and had him star in a movie set in Mississippi and tried to make him this like country bumpkin, it just flat out wouldn't work. You're like, I can see how fake this is. But yeah, to your point, if you grabbed a random guy out of Mississippi and just had him act, then it would feel a lot more authentic. And that, I think people respond to that. That's not to say there's not a place for actors who can, move themselves geographically and change dialects and things. That's obviously really impressive and cool, but having it be authentic is such a big deal.
And I think I want to talk about something more personal. And I'm going to ask something about a creative endeavor that you've been doing, but I got to mention my own shit first. I've been recently I haven't been having writer's block. I'm always able to write something, but I have filming block where I'm not able to film something because I don't think that I can write something. Like I wrote an entire script about me ditching religion and how I had an argument with my friend. Like I'm like, fuck religion, I don't want to do this shit anymore. Adam and Eve's a bullshit story. Fucking God's an abusive father and Adam and Eve, and how, why fucking tempt people with a fucking fruit and all that shit. And I wrote an entire script about an internal monologue I had about Adam and Eve and shit like that. And I'm like thinking, should I film this or should I? Like I'm thinking like it's way more real and way more fun to film demented videos of me and my friends rambling about some bullshit than actually write some script. I'm not saying people shouldn't make movies, but I'm saying it's much more real when you for me to film conversations I have with people, and how this is kind of, I've been sort of disregarding podcasts recently. I'm thinking, oh, it's just something I'm doing. But then I'm starting to realize that these podcasts are the greatest representation of myself that I've been building up to my entire life. You know what I mean?
Yep. Because it's real. It's honest. It's not written down, and you could write an amazing story and you can shoot it and have an excellent movie and stuff like that. But I think one of the things, I think this is why TikTok is what TikTok is, the people want to know other people, and people want to hear other people's stories and have an idea of who they are. And maybe that's a separate thing from, I want to see Godzilla fight King Kong, but there's a real, some of the people who are making the most money in America right now are just vlogging or they're Twitch streaming. And it's just, here's who I am. You guys want to hang out with me? And people like that, authenticity is, I think, the one of the highest valued resources that we have. If someone's willing to be authentic and people like that person, then they're going to go through the roof. We've seen it ever since Twitter and Instagram and Facebook became popular, and you can keep an eye. I know what The Rock did today because I follow him on Instagram. That's a huge part. The Rock isn't The Rock because he can act. He's The Rock because everyone knows him and everyone knows his personality. And I think that's a huge thing. So yeah, I think that's part of why podcasts are so huge, because it's not scripted. It's not fake. And that's not to say something that's, written and acted can't be awesome, but people want to get to know each other too. Exactly. Yeah.
So what have you been writing?
I've been writing a lot of stand-up lately. And it was interesting. So about a year ago when we were starting quarantine, I was kind of due for a break at that time anyway. And so I was like, I'm just going to stop for a second. I didn't know it was going to be a year, what I didn't want to do at that time was write a bunch of things about quarantine, because I thought that was hacky and that everyone was going to be doing it. And I didn't want to just write the same thing that everyone was doing. I have the same rule about President 45. I don't write about him because everybody's got jokes about him. And I don't want to write the 1,000th joke you've heard about him. And so I got away from that. But then the thing I started realizing in the last few months was that not necessarily quarantine and COVID and everything that everyone sees outside is what I want to write about. But I've done a lot of just like self-discovery and learned about myself and made some changes and things like that. And I've realized and thought about a lot of things during this time. And so I'm just writing a lot of what I think are more challenging jokes. I think in the past I was really trying to be digestible. And I perform for almost entirely white audiences most of the time where I'm at. And so I always wanted to talk about things like race, for example, in a way that was digestible for the white folks. And that's something that I'm trying to get away from. I want to just get into more reality and more honesty, and not shy away from those things. And so a lot of what I'm writing recently is my honest thoughts and reactions to some of the things we're seeing out there, particularly with regards to race, but just, a lot of philosophical things. I've really just dove into philosophy. So I'm trying to get a little bit more heady, and it's an uncomfortable space for me, but it's one I want to be in. You know what I mean? I could write really simple dick jokes all day and probably do just fine, but I just really want to come from more of a place of honesty and realism. And so that's where I've been trying to focus. And it's a lot more challenging, but I think it'll be a lot more rewarding if I can make it connect in the right way. So that's kind of a shift that's happened for me. Also because, what I've seen lately is I think what we've discovered this last year is you don't need to go on a stadium tour to be a big comic. You can have a podcast with a solid following and you can do small regional shows. And that's a strong, passionate fan base that really supports people. And I don't need to be Kevin Hart. I don't need to be on TV. I just want to have people that know me and like me. And so it's been a change of thinking that I think has been really interesting. And creatively, it's opened me up in a new way, because talking about all of the events of the last year in a way that's digestible for everybody feels kind of impossible to me right now. And so I've just kind of swung back around to just like your Zappa clip that you played. I'm just going to try to do me in a way that is funny, and we'll see if people connect to it. And if I'll find the people that will, and the people that won't find me, and that's okay.
There is when people grow to appreciate the small amount of people that enjoy them, and you start to think like, hey, how can I please this small group of people? But then you start to stray away from people who provide false promises, so I can give you this, bro, you just need to give me that. Like, you start to be like, fuck out of here, bro, I don't need you. And and then when you start to cut off people that you don't really need to get you places, then you start to come into your own, morph into your own being, morph into your own existence. And then when you morph into that, then you are beloved and appreciated, but you also know yourself. I think everybody, I think the most toxic people are ones who often aren't aware of themselves and how they act. Like, they don't analyze, they don't step out of their own body. Because if you want to ever, let's give a tip to people who don't know how to analyze themselves. You have to, first off, the first step into that is realizing your existence is not entirely original. It's not every human's existence was created out of the most unoriginal act ever, and that's fucking. Like you know what I mean? If you actually think about it, everybody's existence is unoriginal, but and then when you realize that, you start to have comfort in everything you do. Consistently make yourself comfortable, consistently, minimize everything you do. A lot of people don't like that because they say, oh, when you try and minimize stuff, that means you're not taking it seriously. Why would you take everything seriously? Okay? Right. That's just more stress.
Yep. Yeah, I just today actually was watching a video on Stoicism, and they made a point that was, events don't make you unhappy. It's your response to events that make you unhappy. Because you can't control anything outside of what's in your head. But if you see something, you can either go, oh my gosh, that's the end of the world, I hate that, it sucks, I'm reacting poorly to it. Or you can take it for what it is. And if you realize, and that's I think at the very center of my comedy, and most comedy, this isn't unique to me, is just recognizing how absurd all of this is. Everything we're doing is dumb. We're all just playing stupid games with each other, and some people win and some people lose, but they're all just dumb games that we decide to play to take up the time that we have while we're here.
They're all in our head.
Exactly. And so when you start realizing that, and you start seeing the things gosh, what's an example of this? I think the way that we look at marriage is a weird thing. And the way that we assume everyone is going to do it, and that not doing it is wrong, is a weird, dumb thing, right?
Haven. Everybody thinks it's an imaginary safe haven.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, so I'm gonna tie myself to because what marriage has its basis in is exchanges of land and power and all of that, and influence and things like that, and it doesn't really serve that purpose anymore. But people don't think about it because they're clouded by the white dresses and the pictures on Instagram and all that stuff. And I think if you take it, it takes a big step back. And I don't know if everyone is capable of just stepping outside of their dome here. But the second you do that, and you start seeing how kind of silly all of these things that we do are, most of our jobs are totally dumb. And I recognize that about my job. And it allows me to de-stress about it a lot of the time.
Yes.
And I think, I don't think a lot of people like that. I think people think it's reductive and maybe insulting to people who think that things are important, and that's fine. If people want to have that as their mindset, that's okay. But I think there's a beauty in just seeing how ridiculous is it that we collectively gave $2 billion to watch a guy in a robot suit fight a roided out Barney. That's dumb. And we all take it really seriously, myself included, but it's dumb, and a lot of things, most things are like that. But it takes that step of how do you get outside your head and recognize it? Because it's really hard. We're all just we've got to walk our path in the maze and just keep our eyes on the prize and just go do the next thing. It's really hard. And that's the thing that like quarantine for me has done, for better or worse, because I'm sounding like a crazy person, but if you sit in silence and you give yourself a chance to just think and examine and stuff like that, I think it provides opportunity for a lot of growth that most of the time we just don't get time to do as adults, especially. But I think a lot of people have had that chance now. So I'm interested to see. I think there will be a lot of cool creative stuff, I hope, that comes out in the next few years as a result of this time. Because I'm finding inspiration. For a long time, I was totally blocked up. I was completely dry of material and stuff. But I've been able to change the way I'm thinking about it. And it seems like the faucet is open again. And I hope that's the case for a lot of other people because I want to see a lot of cool shit.
After the plague came the Renaissance.
Yeah, exactly.
So while this plague was very minor, and that's pure, I don't know. I have not been directly affected for it. Sorry if I offended. Not sorry. I mean, yeah, sorry if I offended someone who's been directly offended by it. Yeah, I know people who've died from it, but I did not let this stop me from getting employed and doing stuff for myself and trying to enjoy myself and enjoy other people. Like, you know what I mean? Because we prosper. But I feel like, what was I saying? Like, even though I fucking hate the boomer generation and they're, like, probably one of the worst examples of human beings ever to exist, and they need to go. They need to be put down. All of the remaining boomers just need to be put down. Anyways, so they accomplished a lot. Even though I don't like them, they accomplished a lot after a really shitty period in time.
Yep.
But the American boomer is the quintessential what not to be when it comes to humans.
I think it's the rigidity. I think it's the rigidity. I think what the boomers did that was great when they did it. And I think people who exactly. And I think that's what we needed as a people then. And I think the problem as people age and I think the real challenge that we have just as people and as a society in general is as we age, do we stay flexible and do we move with the times, or do we get rigid and plant ourselves and decide we don't need to change anything? And it's the people who stay flexible that continue to be relevant and important and influential, because you can't just do the same thing forever. This is gonna seem like it comes out of nowhere, but Kobe in his NBA career, he was like a fast, high jumping dunk machine early in his career. He just had springs for legs. He could go higher than anybody else. But then as he aged, he couldn't do that anymore. But if he kept trying to do that same thing, he would have failed. He would have had a 10-year career. But as you age, you have to figure out a way to change with the times, develop your jump shot. Okay. Play low to the ground. And then he gets to the fadeaway. And to gracefully age is to be flexible and to change with the times and be able to adjust. LeBron also is another example in the NBA. He just would have dunked on dudes all fucking day. Now he's getting to a point where he can jump shoot a little bit more. He's distributing from the point guard position. And if you're not willing to change with the times and stay up to date, then you won't last. And I think that's the only issue really that I have with the boomers, because I actually have a few issues with the boomers, but that's the one, is just the rigidity and the idea that we should all still be operating in the same way we were in the 50s is just dumb, because we didn't have the internet then. And now we do. And that's reason enough to do everything differently. And a lot of those folks just don't want to. But the ones that do are the ones that, are still relevant and influential.
Yeah. That's why the reason a lot of artists from the boomer generation, I think the best thing about the boomer generation, the really only positive thing I can say about the boomer generation, is the people who completely unplugged from everything that the older counterparts were doing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
most of the artists of the time,
Yep.
Like,
yep.
the Hendrix, you know, the Doors, and all these, you know, fucking Al Pacino and fucking all those great filmmakers, actors, and musicians, you know, that completely unplugged and said, "Hey, I'm gonna make some different shit. I'm gonna make some shit that's more positive, more fucking forward-looking, for more, you know." Stan Lee, I mean, he's not a boomer, but you know what I mean, like, fucking,
Yeah.
he really fucking pushed forward and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna the boomers I look up to, or it'd be like, how do I explain it? It's like you're looking at a revolutionary, you know what I mean?"
Exactly. That goes back to the indie versus pop thing that we were talking about earlier. Is I think culture only moves forward because of the people who are the anti-culture, right? It's the people who stepped outside the box that move us forward. Otherwise, we'd be making Casablanca every year still.
Oh
If someone didn't come out, and I love Casablanca, but every movie shouldn't be that. You know, we need the anti that movie. We need Star Wars. We need
Mean Girls.
Taxi Driver. We need Blade Runner. We need Jurassic Park. We need these movies that are so. We need Mean Girls. Yeah,
and Mean Girls is better than Citizen Kane, though. I'm just gonna say that.
I haven't seen Citizen Kane, but Mean Girls does not get enough credit for what it is. I think it's packaged in a silly, dumb pink.
That is so fetch. Like,
but it's a really smart. I think it's a smarter movie than a lot of people think, and I think it moved the dial. I mean, you go from Mean Girls to Bridesmaids, and there's a new genre, right? It's now you have the female ensemble comedy that didn't exist, as far as I'm aware, before then. And we've had really good movies since then that fit into that mold. Tiffany Haddish broke out because of Girls Trip. Girls Trip, I don't think exists unless those other ones do, because you didn't have proof yet that an ensemble female-led comedy could
White
make
Chicks
sense.
Is not a female comedy, though.
Right, yeah, White Chicks don't count.
White Chicks does not.
Yeah. And it wasn't like, you know, use anything I think like the whole representation movement, right? Like we're going to have movies like Black Panther, Minari, you mentioned earlier from this year. Let's have leads that don't look like every lead we've ever had. And it's an opportunity to discover the fact that people want to see different stuff. And now that there's proof of concept that, you know, a Black or an Asian led film or a female led film or an LGBTQ plus led film can have legs, it opens up the whole world of this new stuff that we can do. And that's why we aren't just watching replays of Casablanca every year, because that's proof of concept.
Was great. And Black Panther was like great. And I'm glad that it, you know, got as successful as it was. I like it, but you know, it's basically just Marvel Lion King, but I like it.
Yeah. That's a pretty good summary of it.
But I'm proud that like how do I say this without sounding like I don't know. I can't relate to it, but you know what I mean? I'm proud that an audience was able to choose and be like, "Hey, I identify with this." Fuck yeah to that.
Yep.
But I'm not going to sit here. It's like the people who it's like the white people who think like who say shit like there's like white people that fucking say like so I can relate to Good Kid, Mad City and To Pimp a Butterfly. Like it's such a relatable album.
Mm-hmm.
And like the struggles of society. It's like, oh my god, like shut the fuck up. Know your place. Know that like respect the people like learning their own. Like let them figure it out on their own and let these people like analyze. Like you're not a part of that club. You can support them, but you gotta realize like you're not a part of that club, and you gotta let them fucking stand up for themselves. You know what I mean?
Yep. I think when people do that, they're making it about them, and I don't think we often enough just let people tell us their stories and leave it at that. You know, and you know, I'm all for striving to relate to things and to other people, but I don't think a lot of suburban white kids should feel the need to relate to Kendrick Lamar. They're not Kendrick Lamar ever, and they're not ever going to be Kendrick Lamar. So just let him tell you the story and appreciate the story for what it is. Yeah. And don't make it about yourself.
Yes.
There's a lot. Actually, Kendrick is a good. I meant to tell you this. I've been. I know you're a hip hop fan, so I've been diving back. I've been kind of going back through albums that I've missed or that I haven't really listened to. And so I just got back to Good Kid, Mad City last week. I just went through Nas Illmatic a couple of weeks ago, and I had never just listened to that album straight through. And so I'm just going back through and finding some of these other albums.
What do you think of Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst?
Say that again.
What do you think about the song Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst by Kendrick? That 10-minute one where it's like with the piano and it's like, promise that you will sing about me. Promise that you will.
It's just, it's what we've been talking about. It's personal. It's his story. It's not, he didn't write it for the radio. It feels real. It's different, you know? And so that I dug that whole album for that exact reason. It didn't feel like other albums I've heard. It felt actually original in a way that
Swimming Pools is about alcoholism and how it negatively affected his life. Yeah. But everybody's going to play that shit at a fucking bar and like
I did that back in the when that song came out. I was I think
I can't hate you for that, but like
that's and I was like, pull up, drink, let's fucking go. And now I listen to it and I'm like, no, okay, I get what he's saying. You know, he's got a point here and he's telling a story. I think NWA, I get a lot of inspiration from NWA and I'm obviously, you know, I'm not from Compton or anything like that, but they were telling real stories and people that related to them made them huge. And they did it in a way that wasn't necessarily what everyone else was doing. They weren't guaranteed fame because they used the same 4 chords or the same pop beat progression that Dua Lipa uses. And like it, I don't know. I just like, give me honesty, give me realism, give me something unique that you came up with. I've been going through a lot of Frank Ocean lately, and I think he just has such a unique sound. I don't know, just give me something new. You know, I don't want to hear something that I could hear from 10 other artists.
Yeah. And when it comes to, you know, music I've been fucking with lately, I've been messing with the underground shit because it's mainly the new music. I'm only really the new music. The new music I like is new stuff that sounds like it's old.
Yeah.
Like if you look at funk or Memphis horrorcore, it sounds like old 3 6 Mafia, Gangsta Pat. Yes. Or if you look at Freddie Gibbs stuff, it sounds like fucking, you know, old, you know, 90s shit, you know what I mean? And Freddie Gibbs and, you know, Griselda and Benny the Butcher coming, you know what I'm saying? Like that type of stuff. And but yeah, I just can't with like, I don't hate all the shit that's on the Billboard, but am I going to the Billboard charts to see the new shit? No, I'm probably listening to somebody that I know or just real small or like Soulze or some shit. Like I'm gonna put you on. I'm gonna give you some recommendations, by the way. But,
yeah, send me some. I'm always looking for new stuff. You know what? To completely just go directly against what I was just saying. Are we gonna get Certified Lover Boy soon? Because I need and every song on that album, Drake's new album, is gonna be a #1. So like,
do you know that he dropped the Scary Hours thing, and
Scary
each song
was
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, that was insane. And he's I think he's an example. I think Drake is an example of. I think he's giving us real. It's really produced. I think it's hard to be really well produced and feel authentic.
Yeah.
And he finds a way to do it. And maybe I'm just a Drake apologist or whatever. So maybe not everyone agrees with me, but
I have a cardboard cutout of Drake over there.
Yeah. So it's like, I've been looking for Certified Lover Boy forever now. And I just can't wait to get it. And I know it's going to be a hit and everyone's going to be listening to it. You know, like you said, Lemon Pepper and, what's next? Obviously huge hits and
yeah,
I don't care that he's pop. That's fine. He can be the exception to the rule I was just talking about, or that we've been talking about for the last hour.
Yeah. Let's see, what else could we go into? What have you been doing with like this? Like when are you gonna hit your 200th episode? When's that?
We're just a couple of months out. Our 200th is going to be, we've already got it loosely scheduled for June 17th. So it'll be 200 episodes of that, which has basically been weekly with we've missed very few weeks in almost 4 years of doing the show, which is insane to think about. And I can't give you too much now, but we're gonna be trying some new stuff at that point. We're gonna be trying to. I'll have to leave it at that. There's some exciting. I'm really excited about some new stuff for the show that's going to be happening after episode 200. But it's just been, the SoCo show has been one of those things that, like you talked about, it's real. If someone wanted to get to know me and Seth and Jared, they could just listen to the show and get a pretty good indication of just what type of guys we are. Obviously we play things up a little bit, but it's we started the show to be a kind of a pop culture commentary kind of show. Like we were just, what's the Hollywood story of the week and what TV show came out. And we still obviously pay attention to TV and to movies, but we're trying to get more into a realm of just like, let's just be us for a little bit of time. And I think we've got a really solid, a small, but loyal audience right now that likes us and we can relate to them. And I think one of our big next steps is just finding more people out there who dig us and who are our kind of people.
Yeah, like I just when I was listening to it, when I kind of started getting real into it, I got into it about a year ago, but when I kind of really got into it was like the August.
Yeah.
Last year, August, I kind of said this shit as I was not joking by this, but August was fucking tough for me, man. Like, I remember I told you about, like, some scam shit that happened to me and how I lost a lot of money. Like, that was fucking tough, man. And I got out, and that was another rock. I already had a lot of rock bottom moments and shit, but that was, like, a real fucking rock bottom moment for me. And, like, when all those are those moments where all you have is the entertainment you watch. And you and Jay Buck were, like, probably the only entertainment that I really watched because I knew that, like, y'all were fucking responsive. I'm not saying you have to respond to people, but, like, I would actually, like, try and engage and have conversations with you, even though I know, like, I was fucking barely had any fucking money and shit. Like, and that's why, like, and ever since then, man, like, I've been going uphill with, like, numbers and shit, but also, like, but bro, like at the time it happened, man, it was a low point, and that's why I fuck with you, and I'm gonna continuously try and support you as much as possible.
I appreciate that, man. It's it's what we've been talking about the whole time. It's like, let's be authentic, and let's find the people who we relate to and stay connected. You know what I mean? Like, what's the point of having, like I said, we have a small following. We don't have 1 million listeners or anything like that, but what's the point of having 1 million listeners? You don't know any of them. And if none of them give a fuck about you, who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If we have 100 loyal listeners and they like us and they can communicate with us and feel like they're part of the show, that's one of the things that we try to do is like, we've always wanted to be a show that is a conversation. We want to talk to our audience and we want people to feel like they're involved and can influence the show. And, that's not to say bigger shows can't do that, but what really, our goal isn't to have 10 million subs. It's for whatever number of subs we have to like us as people and connect with us. And, we don't want to have to do the poppy stuff. We don't have to sell out to a studio or whatever, now we would love to get money from a studio. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. For us, it's just about being us, and we've always just put it out because we like doing it. It's conversations that we want to have. And, if people want to listen to them and people like them, then that's awesome. And like I said, I think our next step is just letting more people know that we're here and, we'll find the ones that dig us and, continue to build the community a little bit more. But it's one that we always, if I could personally know all of our listeners, I would want to do that,
Yeah. Like, I just see people either watch, like, the numbers, and I'm just thinking, like, what leads one person to watch that? But then you realize, like, before you get into this creative thing, you realize, like, I was that. I was just that one guy who watched that one guy's videos, and then I ended up thinking, hey, maybe I could do that.
Yep.
Even with you, I was just that one guy who like listened to a couple episodes, and I was thinking, I already was doing podcasting before y'all. Not before you started it, but you know what I mean, like before listening to it. And I was like, dang, that would be cool if I could hop on. And then I eventually started building all my shit up. And then eventually I did hop on in fucking December.
Yeah.
Go check that episode out, by the way.
Yeah, go check that. I wish I had the number. It's we have an opportunity, I think, in the internet age to know people we would never have had a chance to. You and I would never have fucking met if we didn't do what we do. And I think that's cool. And it can be a beautiful thing. It can be a really dumb, shitty thing, but it can also be really cool. And I think we've found ways for it to be really cool. I've reconnected with old friends of mine who found the podcast and started listening, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad you guys are doing this. I feel like I can keep up with you, and I've rekindled friendships that were dormant before then. And, I think it's all about connection. And anyone who listens to our show, who's listening to this, is like, your show is so not that deep, but that's kind of the point. We're just guys, and we just want to talk to people who like the same stuff as us, and I think we've seen every cult following is that, it's like, let's find a group of people who likes this same thing and let's all hang out. That's what every comic convention, it's what every Star Trek convention is, it's like people who can relate to one another hanging out. And that's ultimately, I think, what we're trying to build, and trying to find is more people like us, because we're different. We're not common amongst people who are of our same age. We're quirky, we're different, we have different goals and different values. Yes. And when people can find someone that they can relate to that are outside of the status quo, I think that's when you can really make some deep connections.
And when you associate yourself with that group of people that you like enjoy watching, or people that, when you become a fan of like something real small and you're sort of in this group, I feel like that's a great thing. But that's, like, occasionally it could slip into something where when that fan base grows too big, then this fan base decides like the artists' things apply to them, and then they end up going to war with each other. Like when the artist goes against somebody, then they go against war with another like group of people. You know what I mean? Like fucking Scorsese fans and MCU fans. Like if you like Scorsese movies and you can't like MCU fans, and that's why I try to avoid tribalism, and that's why I'm thankful that there has not been a major social war with anybody. And when you listen to that show, you will find a peaceful environment. You'll find peaceful characters. You'll find entertaining or relatable content, and that's why I decided I'm going to take the leap of faith and meet this motherfucker named Cody, who sounds like an amazing human being. And here we are. This is episode, I don't even know, of HASSDISCUSSES, and this was a great episode. Thank you for joining. Go check their shit out. Link in the description. Thank you for joining. Cody.
Thanks for having me, brother. Bring me back. I'm going to watch, I'll watch City of God, and I'll come back.
Of course. Goodbye.